President Trump is again facing criticism for spreading misleading information about the severity of the coronavirus. Over the holiday weekend, during a White House event, the president claimed 99% of coronavirus cases are totally harmless. That statement is both scientifically and factually incorrect. CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reed reports.
Now we have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
President Trump made that unsubstantiated claim on July 4th, but even his own FDA commissioner, Dr. Stephen Hahn, struggled to support it.
Is the president wrong?
So I'm not going to get into who's right and who's wrong. What I'm going to say, Dana, is what I've said before, which is that it's a serious problem that we have.
Houston's mayor, Sylvester Turner, is battling a record spike in infections. He refuted the president's statement.
The number of people who are getting sick and going to the hospitals has exponentially increased. The number of people in our ICU beds has exponentially increased.
The mayor of Miami-Dade County also insisted the president was wrong.
If it were harmless, I wouldn't be taking the steps that we're taking here in Miami-Dade.
The president also contradicted his own public health experts on the timeline for a vaccine.
And we'll likely have a therapeutic and/or vaccine solution long before the end of the year.
I can't predict when a vaccine will be available.
Former Trump Homeland Security Advisor Thomas Bossert issued this warning.
We have to start at the basics and level with people. Suggesting that it's not dangerous is in itself a dangerous message.
The Trump campaign has announced an outdoor rally on Saturday at the airport in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. But a recent rally in Tulsa resulted in dozens of Secret Service agents and campaign staffers having to quarantine after several tested positive for coronavirus. This time, though, in Portsmouth, the campaign says that attendees will be provided with a mask and encouraged to wear it. Paula Reed, CBS News, the White House.
And for more on this, I'm joined by CBS News' Natalie Brand from the White House. Hi, Natalie. So how else is the White House responding to this latest wave of criticism over the president's description of the coronavirus situation?
Well, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows tried to defend the president's July 4th comments in which, as you pointed out, he seemed to downplay the recent surge in cases that we've been seeing. And Meadows said he was not downplaying the deaths we've had so far, but pointing out that most people are at low risk of death. And we know from the administration's health officials and the coronavirus task force that most of the new cases we are seeing are coming from a younger population under age 40 or age 35. But health experts, they worry that as hospitalizations increase with the surge in cases, especially in the states, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and California, the death rate could start to go up again. That was a concern voiced by former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb, a frequent contributor on our news programs. And so there is widespread concern among not only health experts, but state and city leaders that we're seeing in these states with surging cases. So the messaging out of the White House is really key here, and urging people to heed the safety precautions such as using masks and maintaining social distancing, especially where large crowds are concerned. You mentioned the president's campaign planning to hold another campaign rally this weekend.
Right. And so, Natalie, sticking with the coronavirus, the White House is actively weighing how best to approach the next financial stimulus package. Where do things now stand on that front? And how far is the White House willing to negotiate with Democrats on this matter?
And to take you back several weeks in time, you may remember that House Democrats passed their additional stimulus package, the $3 trillion HEROES Act, which leaders, Republican leaders in the Senate, called a non-starter. So that brings us, that was back in May. Now we are in July. Congress is on recess, but negotiations will have to continue behind the scenes. The White House today saying, or I should mention the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, saying that the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin will continue to lead these negotiations. He has had a successful track record of negotiating with congressional leaders across both parties for the past packages, when there was a huge urgency to get out emergency funding to individuals and also businesses impacted and our health system. But since then, the White House and Republicans have wanted to take a pause and assess how those previous packages, stimulus funding, have worked out. And that's kind of caused this delay in negotiations for the next round of funding. We did get some interesting insight from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is at home now in Kentucky, but speaking to reporters, he again reiterated his message that he believes liability protections for businesses and other entities, universities, will have to be a key part of the next stimulus package coming out of the Senate. That's certainly expected to raise and create debate across both sides, disagreement over liability protections and what that could look like. But one other important note, Meadows was asked today whether additional round of stimulus payments could still be part of the next round of funding. He said yes, although it's a little unclear at this point what that looks like. The president, we know, has talked about payroll tax cuts, so we'll have to see what happens there and how quickly all the sides and parties involved to get together, because the extended unemployment benefits are set to begin to expire at the end of July. So time is of the essence here. Again, right. Congress is out of Washington, D.C., so there's going to have to be a lot of talking behind the scenes and from a distance.
Absolutely. All right, Natalie, and finally, the Trump campaign has announced its next rally at an airport hangar in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on Saturday. And you'll recall the campaign's last rally in Tulsa resulted in several campaign staffers contracting COVID-19, and there was some criticism over how that rally was conducted. Is the campaign taking any additional precautions this time around?
Well, in the campaign's advisory, they do note that there will be ample access to hand sanitizers. They say all attendees will be provided a face mask that they are strongly encouraged to wear. But that's the big question, because as you mentioned, and at the Tulsa rally and then a separate campaign event, well, it was actually an official White House visit to Arizona, but Students for Trump were holding what felt like a campaign-style event. We saw there that masks were encouraged by the organizers of that specific event. But then when you look inside, not a lot of people were, in fact, wearing the mask. The majority were not. And social distancing was not apparent. Similar story in South Dakota on Friday. So even though the campaign is making an effort to try to take these safety precautions, it's really up to the individual attendees who it could be thousands of people packing a tight state, although we do want to point out that New Hampshire is a place that has seen a decline in coronavirus cases. This will be held at an airport hangar, but we've seen campaign staffers contract the coronavirus. 8 members of the president's advance team ahead of the Tulsa rally, and then some also key campaign officials and surrogates, including Herman Cain, who has been hospitalized in the Atlanta area. It's not known where he contracted COVID-19, but he was hospitalized last week, 9 days after that Tulsa rally, where there was a photograph of him not wearing a mask. And late Friday night, we learned that another top campaign official, Kimberly Guilfoyle, also the girlfriend of Donald Trump Jr., tested positive for the coronavirus after she had traveled to South Dakota for the Mount Rushmore event. They do stress that she was not on Air Force One or in direct contact with the president, but we see that travel brings risks of coronavirus exposure, and in some of these cases, positive test results.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Natalie Brand at the White House, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.